Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Kuwait Foundation for Advancement of Science, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this KFAS Links event. KFAS is keen in promoting concepts and ideas that would contribute to the development of the country. And for that, we are holding these speaker events in the evenings, and this is just one part of what we do. We have many other activities that targets specifically the private sector with regard to their human development through training programs throughout the year. We have with us tonight Mr. Claude Legrand. He came all the way from Canada to speak to you tonight. He's one of the top authorities in practical innovation. And tonight he will tell you about how to create an organization that has a systematic innovation. With that, I would like to welcome Mr. Legrand.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, the microphone works. Magic. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the welcome. I've been here for 4 days, and I've only met nice people. So I don't know if KFAS organized it so that they put only nice people around me for 4 days. But if you did, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. But thank you. And my job here is not to tell you what to do. My job is to tell you about my experience. I've been working in the area of business innovation for over 35 years. You know, I used to say 30 years, and then I calculated recently as something like 37 years. The advantage I have over you is I've made more mistakes than you have. Okay? So my job is to tell you what I've learned. It's not what you should do. One of the things I've learned, we were in a training program for 2 days with about 18 leaders of Kuwaiti organization. And one of the things I've learned is you can't do everything that I would like you to do because it's not part of your culture. Okay, fine, perfect. I have no problem with that. But what I'd like to give you today is a sense of what are the principles that you can use in order to make an organization more innovative. Okay? This is one of my favorite quotes. The greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. What prevents most people from innovating is because they know too much. When you are an expert, you know, like if you were an expert in 1200, in the year 1200, you knew that the earth was flat. Okay, and that was the knowledge you had, and you knew it, and you couldn't invent anything to innovate around that because that was the truth. So one of the things we've done over the past 35 years is we've worked with companies like banks. We were talking about banks a few minutes ago. I think I've worked with every single bank in Canada, you know, over these years. We work with people like Staples, retail. We work with life insurance companies. We currently are working for Hyundai, the car company. And they all have the same problem. They want to be more innovative, and they have no idea how to do it. You can take an MBA today in the US or in Canada and not hear the word innovation. It's shocking, but that's the reality. So what we need to do is my job now is to preach the gospel of innovation, if you want. So that's, for me, is the most important. So I manage a company called Ideaction, Inc., and you can see our website. One of the things you can do is actually on our website, there is a lot of newsletters and documents you can download on some of the things I'll be talking about today. So please don't hesitate to go there. You don't have to put your name in you don't have to do anything. You just download the document. All right. The first thing you may have seen is we do not talk about innovation. We talk about innovating. Now, it sounds like a very trivial, minor issue, but it is absolutely fundamental. The word innovation today doesn't mean anything, or it means too many things. when you're talking about innovation in a meeting or in a group, at university, anywhere, if you don't say specifically what you mean, you have no idea what people are talking about. Actually, I speak at a lot of innovation conferences, and I pay very much attention to do people give their own definition of innovation before they start. And if they don't, I won't listen to them, because they don't understand the confusion. So if you are, for example, in the Canadian government, innovation means research and development, R&D. There is a Ministry of Innovation in Canada. The only thing they fund is R&D. We talked to the minister. We had meetings with the minister, and we say, do you know that the stuff you're working on, like, is about 10% of the economy? And 50% of the economy, or 60 or 70%, is a service business. And the service business doesn't do R&D. They say, oh yeah, that's very interesting. So we talked, we worked with them, and we had a discussion. And they say, go and talk to our experts, etc., and we'll see if we can fund something. So we went to see them, and we talked in front of a panel to get funding. Now, who do you think was in the panel? Physicist, chemist. And they looked at this guy who is trying to get money to do service innovation, which is different. And they said, but they're going to take our money. So they refused our project. This is fascinating. And you can't get through that. So I was talking about, you can get an MBA today and not talk about innovation. So that means that the leaders of today can perfectly get an MBA in a big US university and not hear how to create an innovating organization. So let me give you a few facts. So innovating is the process by which you get innovation. I'm only interested in the process because innovation is the outcome. When you have the outcome, it's too late. Okay? It's like accounting or marketing. For me, it is something you do. It is a process, and it's not the outcome. The outcome will come. There is also the difference between creativity and innovation, or creativity and innovating. Creativity is having ideas. Children, very, very, very creative. Artists, very, very creative. Innovating is implementing ideas. The difference between an idea and an implemented idea is called change. And my favorite saying is, change is good, you go first. Okay? Everybody likes change for other people. So what's fascinating is that we all focus on different aspects. Some people will focus on creativity, no problem. Like if you want to learn about creativity, go and learn it, but don't call it a business initiative. Unless you get your business to fund it, you learn stuff. But it's not about innovating or innovation. And R&D is the same thing. It's different processes. So what I'm focusing on is innovation in business. Is that okay? So innovating is business. Think banks, think retail, think things like that. Innovating, the second element to understand is that innovating is not an objective, it's not a goal. It's only a tool or an enabler. Like, do you have a marketing department in your company? Good. Would you put marketing as a core value of your organization? No, it wouldn't make sense. Would you put accounting as a core value of your organization? Doesn't mean that accounting is not good and you don't value accounting, but you shouldn't put it as a core for your organization. It's the same with innovating. Innovating is problem solving. Why? Would you put problem solving as a core value of your organization? You wouldn't. What we have found is any organization that has innovation as a core value doesn't apply innovation. If it's for me, I'm busy. Thank you. Okay, so what is our definition of innovating? Creating value with implemented ideas in everything you do and how you do it. The first thing is it's about creating value. If it doesn't create value, why should you do it? The second thing is it's implemented idea, because if it's not implemented, it's not worth it. Okay? So that's the very important thing. And it's about everything you do and how you do it. So it's not only the product that you do, but it's also the little thing, your processes, the little things that you do. So innovating can apply to everything. It's like my other quote is better problem solving. So stop thinking of innovation as invention. I mean, you can still have invention. I have nothing against. We have guests who are from the R&D world. There is nothing wrong with R&D. You have made our world better, and thank you very much. But when you are a bank, you don't do R&D. You are an insurance company, you don't do R&D. And it may be a problem, but what you want is innovating as a problem-solving process. So, when I'm talking about innovating, there is another element, is you still have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, you thought you did. But in fact, you don't, because, and this is a chart that has two elements. The vertical is from a book by Rolf Smith called The 7 Levels of Change. Rolf Smith, for information, was the head of innovation in the US Army. And Rolf is a brilliant innovator. And what he said is that when you are innovating, you have to understand that you can innovate from level 1, improve what you do, level 2, level 3. Those 3 levels are improvement. Do the right thing, do things right, do things better. Level 4 is do away with things. Stop doing stuff. Level 5, do things other people are doing. Level 6 and 7, do things that haven't been done, do things that can be done. So innovating, if you don't tell me at what level you want to innovate, I have no idea what you're talking about. Is that fair? I have no idea what you're talking about. So when we work on a project with clients, we say, okay, what level do you want to work at? Do you want to improve the current situation? Do you want to simplify it? Or do you want to create something brand new? If you want to improve, it may take a day or 2. If you want level 6 or 7, you're talking 6 months and 20 people. Most large organizations can manage 1 or 2 projects at level 6, 7 a year, no more. But they can manage thousands of projects at level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the way, the biggest value, the biggest bang for your effort is level 4, do away with things. Stop doing stuff that don't create value for your organization. And it's actually something that we work a lot with, because when we come in an organization to consult, so the CEO calls us and say, we want to be more innovative. We say, okay, fine, let's have a meeting with your executive. And we have a meeting and we understand their business. And I would say 90% of the case, the biggest problem is they're too busy. Is that fair? Are you all too busy? Of course you're too busy. So you're too busy. So how am I going to put innovation on top of what you do? Or innovating on top of what you do? So in, let's say, half of the contracts we do, we start by taking stuff out. Level 4, do away with things. Stop doing things that do not add value. Because if you have a company that's already incredibly busy doing multitude of projects, how do I want to add more things in the pipeline? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the problem, make it much, much worse, and the company is not going to do better in 6 months or in 12 months. So the first thing is take away things. So if I don't understand the level at which you want to innovate, I don't know what you're doing. And then on the horizontal bar at the top, you can innovate in different areas. So this is generic, because this will be different for every company. If you are in university, you may change the top, but the 7 levels remain. And what you want to understand is most organizations can manage 1 or 2 big projects, and then as many as you want at level 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that okay? So remember, innovating, even with my definition, creating value with implemented idea, is not enough. You have to tell me at what level you want to innovate. Now, we're going to use the same process, the same methodology, the same principles, but we're going to use it very differently whether we work at level 1, 2, or at level 5, 6. Okay? By the way, I forgot to tell you, I wrote a book. By the way, if you want to write a book, please call me. I'll tell you how not to write a book. It took me 10 years. I'll give you the secret, by the way. You have to find somebody who has written a book. Because once you've written one, you know how to write it. Until you have written one, you have no idea what is involved. So I worked for 9 years, didn't write a book. Then I found somebody who had written a book, and we wrote this one together. This book will be given at the end. We'll have a Q&A. You can ask as many questions as you want. And this book will be given to the person who asks the best question. And this is totally subjective. It's my opinion on what's the best question. And if you can stifle me, you win. Some people, anybody who can embarrass me actually will win. Okay. All right. So here is the definition of how innovating happens. Innovating happens when individuals and teams use innovative thinking to solve complex problems. It's mostly teams for different reasons. Innovating happens when people use innovative thinking to solve problems. Leaders, culture, and organization can only enable or prevent individuals and teams from using innovative thinking. The leader should never, ever, ever be the innovator. Let me tell you a true story. I'm working with an organization. I did a conference. It was a very, very large organization that had lots of subsidiaries as a publishing company. And I did a conference for their executive, and at the end of the conference, somebody comes to me and say, what can I do because my people are not innovative? I say, well, who are you? What do you do? So he said, well, my name is whatever his name was, and I'm the head of a newspaper. I'm the publisher. Okay, how many people do you have working for you that can't innovate? So I have 80 people. They're all smart. They all have degrees. And he says, they can't innovate. I say, how did you know they can't innovate? And he said, well, it's very simple. Every time I give them a challenge, my ideas are better than theirs. The people got the message. I mean, 5 times he gives a challenge, 5 times his ideas are better than theirs. Well, next time, just turn off their brain. So when you are the leader, your job is to create the condition where individuals and teams can innovate, not to be the innovator in chief. If you are the innovator in chief, you are actually risking the future of your company because you probably stifle everybody else. And it's very hard to restart it. Yes?
Some organizations have chief innovation officer.
Well, chief innovation officer is something else. You've got to be very, very careful when you do that. And it's not in the presentation, but I'll give you my feeling about it. I've got a feeling about lots of those things. When you have an organization with a chief innovation officer, you have to be very, very careful that everybody else doesn't turn off their brain. Oh, hey, innovation, it's his job. It's not my job. So that's the first thing you have to be cautious of. The second thing is you want to make sure that that person never owns the project. The moment they start owning projects, they're in competition with the rest of the organization, and they don't stand a chance. I'm not talking R&D here. I'm talking about business innovation. The moment they own the project, they're finished. Because they're going to start competing for resources with the other department, and they're gone.
Owning, you mean owning by taking credits? Or owning
by taking credit and trying to get the benefit out of the...
About the trait of ownership.
Yeah, no, but owning means it's we found it. Okay? So what you want is when you have a director of innovation, and we have an organization we work with who have director of innovation, what they are is they are an enabler. They never own a project, and they're a consultant to the organization. So if somebody said, well, we need better customer service, they come to him and he say, okay, who is the owner of your problem? And then they work with that person to help them innovate.
Sort of like a PMO office for project management.
PMO office, exactly.
We ask that you hold your questions toward the end.
Sorry.
This way we don't.
That's okay. I'm responding to the question. But if you can, yes, we'll try to leave at least as much time as you want for question, and I can stay. Very good. Okay. So, by the way, culture and organization are also problematic because the culture will stop. And by the way, culture is not the biggest thing. Organization, like HR, for example, can kill innovation much easier than anything. I'll give you an example of how to do that. Okay, so what is an innovating organization? An innovating organization is an organization with every employee and team constantly look for opportunities and solves problems in the best possible way. Now, who thought about the nature of problem in the last week or so? One person, two people. Very good. You have to come and see me after and tell me how you thought about it, because that's really interesting. All right. So why do we need innovating in organization? So a few years back, when I wrote the book, I stopped working for a while, and I went to look for what were the common root cause for the need for innovation, for innovating. Is that okay? So what I was looking for is, change, communication, globalization, more competition, faster competition, etc. What do all those things have in common? And at the time, I was working with the Schulich Business School in Toronto, and there was a professor who was working on the theory of complexity. I don't know if you're familiar with the theory of complexity. Or the example she used is healthcare. Think about healthcare as the most complex business system you can imagine. Everybody has a stake, everybody has an interest, everybody has an ego, and they all have a gun to each other's head. The patient, the doctor, the nurses, the administrator, the funder, everybody has a gun. Okay, so what we found is that every leader talks about innovation, few organizations are doing it, they're not getting the change they want, and business is becoming more complex. So everybody agrees that business is becoming complex, okay? Like 80% of executives say business is becoming more complex. Business also tell you that change doesn't work. Change management doesn't work. You know that the average successful project of change in businesses, in large businesses, is about 30%. That was a McKinsey study. 30% of change projects succeed. Have you ever asked yourself why? Complexity is the second thing. And everybody wants innovation. So just to give you an idea, every study over the past, I'd say 20 years, 20, 25 years, every study says that innovation is important. Actually, I've got the number here. This is the number of a survey we did in Canada with Schulich and the Globe and Mail, which is a national newspaper. 80% of leaders say innovation is important. 30% are satisfied with the results in their organization. Those numbers have not changed, whether it's in North America or worldwide, for 25 years. Like I have studies from 25 years ago that give those results. I have studies from 3 years ago that gives the same result. Isn't that shocking? Well, it's not shocking when you know that you don't teach it at university, so where would they have learned how to do it? So what we did is we went to look for, and working with the person who was working on complexity, her theory is the nature of problem has changed over the past 25 years. So bear with me, and the example and the timeline I'm going to use is for Western Europe, okay, because I wouldn't know what the timeline would be in Kuwait. But bear with me, and please follow me in that little explanation going back 200 years. This is what we call a simple problem. Simple problems were the dominant problems during the agrarian economy. The agrarian economy was from whenever you want to start until about 1850, 1875. Most people in Western Europe died within 20 kilometers from where they were born. And when they died, they did the job that their parents were doing. So the only thing they needed to know is how to survive and how to do the job that their parents would. Where did they learn it? From their family and from the community. Now, scholarization during the agrarian economy was 10 to 15 to 20% maximum, depending on the country. But it was around 10% in most countries. 10% of the people went to school. Suddenly, the Industrial Revolution arrived around 1875, second wave of the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, the companies went from 1 person or 2 people to 10 people. So when you have 10 people working together, people need to talk to each other, they need to communicate in writing, they need to know how to count. Is that okay? So that's the next phase, which is the industrial economy, 1875, 1980, 85. During that time, the only thing you needed to do was to know how to read, write, and count. Is that fair? Now, we developed extraordinarily all the tools that you needed to have between 1875 to 1975 and 1980. And we developed extraordinary tools. But the school, interestingly enough, was developed at the same time as the second wave of the Industrial Revolution. Scholarization in Western Europe went from 10% to 60, 70% over a period of 25 years. Now, going to school meant from 8 to 13, 14 years, because you only needed to know how to read, write, and count. But what happened, this is fundamental, because school was built to develop people who could work in the industrial economy. I'll give you more on that after. So the nature of problem become complicated. A complicated problem is 1 million, 10 million, 100 million simple problems put end to end or in parallel. So when you want to put a bolt on the wheel of the car, this is actually a complicated problem because you have to manufacture the bolt, you have to place the bolt near the place where you're going to put it, you need to have a tool to install the bolt. It's probably 5,000, 10,000 steps, little problem that need to be solved. So a complicated problem is a million different steps, but there is a better way to do it. And the better way, which is really the pinnacle of complicated problem solving, is Six Sigma. You're all familiar with Six Sigma? Zero defect. Okay, so zero defect. That was the ultimate problem-solving methodology for the industrial economy. And schools was built and developed and grew in order to provide people for the industrial economy. But school, if you think about it, is predicated on one premise. There is one better answer. The teacher asks the question, and you win if you give the teacher the answer that the teacher expects. Is that fair? Oh no, this book is full of questions.
No, the way you are going to handle it.
The way I got to hand it. But think about it. One question, one better answer. Is that all right? So that's how you got trained. The only problem is that it's also how your children are currently being trained. Do you teach innovative thinking in school in Kuwait? I can tell you we don't do it in Canada. We don't do it in the US. So what they learn is they learn a problem-solving methodology that is perfect for the industrial economy that has disappeared about 25, 30 years ago. What we have gone to today is the third nature of problem. And the third nature of problem are complex problem, and complex problem is raising children. So think of using Six Sigma, zero defect, to raise a toddler. Thank you for laughing. Doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, and still, that's what we do. The biggest problem that we have currently with organization is we solve complex problems using a methodology that is perfect for complicated problems. We use complex problem you don't know it's ambiguous, etc. And we pretend, no, it's not ambiguous, and there is a better answer. And then we're surprised when it comes back. By the way, there are two definitions, two ways to recognize a complex problem. The first one is it involves people. Customer, employees, whatever. And the second one is problems that keep coming back on your desk. You know the problems that you think you solve it, and then 6 months later it comes back on your desk? That's probably a complex problem, and you haven't used the good methodology to solve it. Okay? So what's very interesting, so there is the nature of complex versus complicated, but one has a high degree of certainty, the other one has uncertainty. One, experience is the dominant skill. The other one is you have to have an open mind. So if you don't have an open mind on a complex problem like raising a child, you're going to get yourself in trouble all the time. You know, the kid wants to wear, like my daughter wanted to wear the same dress for 5 days in a row. So I learned. On the next Monday, the next week, the Monday, I gave her the red dress. No, I don't want red. I hate red. And you wear it. No, I didn't wear that. That's what a child does, and that's their job, by the way, to teach us. But what you have to understand is that in business, one of the biggest examples, if you work for a larger organization, is silos. Silo is the ultimate complex problem. Why haven't we solved the silo problem in the past 30 years? Why? Because we don't have the right methodology and it involves people, therefore it's complex, and we're using complicated thinking to solve it. So innovating is not magic. Innovating is solving complex problems. Does that make sense? So the first thing you have to do is separate complicated and complex problem. Now, the problem is nature is not made in a way that they put one on one side and the other one on the other side. Most of the problem are both complicated and complex. But as soon as you have a large complex element, I'd say more than 20, 25%, whatever, of a problem is complex, you need to use a complex methodology. Otherwise, you're going to find a solution that ignores the people. So, what do innovative organizations do differently? Well, innovative organizations have found a way that people can use different problem-solving methodologies whenever they need a different problem-solving methodology. They don't have one toolbox. The problem is today, when you work in business and you don't understand that theory, you have one hammer. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if I give you a screw, you're going to take your hammer, you're going to bang it in. But that's what we do because we have only one problem-solving methodology. So I'm not saying change how you think. Don't replace what you know, the analytical thinking by innovative thinking. Just add it as a different toolbox that you can use in order to solve complex problems. And then you're going to suddenly discover that you become an innovating organization. Now, it sounds simple. It's a little bit more complicated. After 36 years, I still haven't figured it out completely, but I've got a better idea. So innovative thinking is actually the tool that you're going to be using. So here is what you learn in school. Focus on the answer. One question, just do it. Eliminate ambiguity, automatic, linear, A or B. Yeah. So we're going to do a test. Can I have a volunteer, please? It's not painful. Promise you, it's not painful. It's a little bit embarrassing, but it's not painful. Oh, you volunteer. Well, thank you very much. No, you can stay in your chair. So remember, it's a little bit embarrassing. But the current score is 17,500 to 3, okay? So you shouldn't miss. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer quickly. There is a trick, but I will not lie to you. Is that okay? Okay, so the question is 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1? 1 plus 1? 1 plus 1? No, 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1? 2. Oh, now you're starting of confusing me. No, you have to answer quickly, okay? 1 plus 1. 2 plus 2? 1 plus 1? 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 Let me ask you a totally different question. 1 plus 1? Okay. What was different this time? What did I say before the last 1 + 1? Let me ask you a totally different question. So I didn't lie to you. It was different. But you still gave me the same answer.
The second 1 + 1 were 2.
No. The problem is, I tell you it's different. I give you the question. You give me the same answer. What you could have done is say, how is the question different? Well, I would have told you. Because I say I wouldn't lie. I would have said I went from decimal to binary. So the answer is 1, 0. Now, it doesn't matter if it's one apple, one thing, and it's fruits, and it's one father, one mother, and it's one family, or it doesn't matter what the trick is you use. The score, when I was saying 17,500, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I do a lot of public speaking. There's only 3 people who have said, how is the question different? Can you tell me what they had in common? What had they studied? Sorry? Close, but no. No. Oh no, mathematician, you get them immediately. Like McKinsey type, a consultant, like no problem. I ask them twice, I say, ask you a different question, they say 2, no problem. Philosophy. Because in philosophy, there is no right and wrong answer. So the people who have studied philosophy are able to stay in the question without, because when I ask you, the reason why I repeat it for you is I stress you. When I stress you, you go back to school. I'm the teacher, you are the student, the answer is 2. So that's to show you how powerful, I mean, with all due respect, you're a very, very smart man. I have done CEOs of banks, I have done all sorts of people. You get the same response because you get caught, and that's what happens every day. You are paid to find solutions because you were trained in school to find solutions. You work in your organization, you are there to find solution, so you end up feeling that you're paid to find solution. So your job is to give an answer. That's what the stress is. So the difference with innovative thinking is that you have to focus on the question, challenge the question, stop and think, accept ambiguity, step-by-step thinking, diverge and converge, A and B. You follow the logic? The logic is, in the industrial economy, analytical thinking worked perfectly because there was a better answer. So looking for the answer immediately was okay. In the knowledge economy, in the communication economy, the answer is basically depends on how you look at the problem. So when you are in business, by the way, when you're in school, who got the right question? The teacher. Then you go into work and your boss has the right question. They don't anymore. So what ends up happening is your job becomes to respond and to give the answer immediately instead of saying, what's the problem? So when it's a complicated problem, you're good. When it's a complex problem, you get caught. And that's why the problem keeps coming back. You follow the logic? So focus on the question, challenge the question, stop and think. The problem is your automatic brain is more powerful than your intelligence. We have other tests to do that. But trust me, your automatic brain is so powerful that if you don't think about it and if you don't find a way to stop yourself, you're going to jump to the answer. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to stop your automatic brain. If you don't stop your automatic brain, you're in automatic. If you're in automatic, you're in analytical thinking. So if the problem is complicated, you're good. If the problem is complex, you're cooked. You're finished. You don't stand a chance. The logic makes sense? Okay. So using analytical thinking on complex problems create rework. Do you know what rework is? Is unnecessary doing the same thing twice or 10 times. On average in organization, and we checked in Kuwait, it's good. On average in organization, employees spend between 30 and 60% of their time redoing things. It's called rework. Most organizations have no idea. Like we worked with André, We discovered that 50% of the time, 2.5 days a week, you pay someone for 5 days, they spend 2.5 days redoing stuff.
Are you talking about private or public?
Sorry?
Private or public?
I've seen no difference. It depends more in the department. Like in accounting, it may be more 20, 30. In marketing, it may be more 60. So it depends more on the nature of your work. HR is higher, marketing is higher, accounting is lower. That's my experience. Engineering is lower. That's usually.
I ask we hold the questions till the end.
Yes, I'm going to be, but you're going to have time to ask the question. Okay, so rework is the biggest problem with organizations today. If you imagine that your staff spends between a day and a half to 2.5 days redoing stuff. Now there are some causes, and by the way, you've never asked yourself what creates the rework. Now if and we find it shocking because we work with organizations and then we say, your average is 50%, okay? And they say, okay, good, and they keep going. Like, why don't you go and find why people are spending 50%? So we did an experiment with TD Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Canada, and with our marketing department. Their rework was between 40 and 60%. And we created a process where we changed how they made decisions. And instead of focusing on the answer as quickly as possible, we made them spend more time in making sure they defined the problem correctly. They cut about 30% of their rework. They basically saved almost a full day a week for their employees of rework just by changing the process. And what they did is you were not allowed to look for solution on a complex problem. And in marketing, 99% of the problem are complex. You were not allowed to look for a solution until you were sure that you had the right problem and the root causes. So when you're working with people on a team, how do you manage that? Well, what that means is when you're working with your boss and your boss gives you, let's assume you're my boss, and you give me a problem, my job is to make sure I understand the problem. Because in 90% of the case, I have no idea what you want. So I'm going to make guesses, and I'm going to do a solution, and then I'm going to come back and say here, and you're going to say, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. Actually, it's not at all what you wanted, but you're a nice person. And then I'm going to go back and redo it. That's 50% of rework is actually poorly defined problems up front. Some of it is because things change, people change their mind. I have no problem with that. That can happen, it's very hard to reduce. But half of it is because people are working on the wrong problem. True. I mean, this was in 99 and 2000 with TD Bank, the marketing department. Very funny because my daughter just started working 3 weeks ago for the marketing department at TD, and they still use the methodology. So it must be doing something right. And the focusing on making sure that when people start working, they have the right question, the right problem. Okay? So anyone can spot the wrong answer. It's harder to spot the wrong question. When we teach innovative thinking, we spend 75% of our time teaching people how to define a question. Because I promise you that most of you didn't learn it at school. Because in school, including university, the teacher has the answer. Now, in some area like engineering, it's not a bad idea. But in other area like marketing or the arts, etc., it's more difficult. So here's the methodology we use. Framework, issue redefinition, idea generation, selection and implementation planning, and measure and improve. So that means that when we're going to work on a complex problem, we first are going to do a framework, and I'm going to give you the detail. Then we're going to do the issue redefinition. And the issue redefinition, the objective is to understand the root causes. Okay? To make sure that you understand the root cause. So, I mean, on some project, we could spend 2 months, 3 months defining what the problem is. I mean, if you're a company like Staples and you want to solve a big problem that's worth hundreds and millions of dollars, spending 2 months to define the problem is not too much. So, you know, a lot of people, a lot of consultants come and say, hey, we'll do creativity and we'll tell you what to do. And we say, no, no, no. We're going to work with you to make sure we understand what your problem is. Issue redefinition, then idea generation. I can teach you brainstorming in half an hour, honestly. Like if you go to the website, you can download 2 newsletters, one on how to prepare a brainstorming and how to run a brainstorming. You don't need any more. You'll know what you need to do. That's not hard. What's hard, because it changes the way you think, is how to redefine a problem. When your mind is saying, I'm wasting my time, I should be solving it. You know, you get paid to solve problems, not to analyze problems, which has indirect consequences which are quite funny. So let's assume you're a boss and your people work in cubicles, okay? Do you have cubicles in Kuwait? Yeah? Good cubicles, nice cubicles, I'm sure. So do you have people who work for you? And they work in cubicles? Good. So let's assume you're walking by those cubicles and there is one of your employees who is looking at the ceiling with their feet on their table. What is your first reaction, honestly?
Daydream.
They're daydreaming.
No, I'm just will stare at him for a while.
Yeah,
Then he will change his
correct.
without
Now, imagine that he's thinking about the next brilliant idea for your organization. It's possible, but you'll have stopped him. Because the first reaction is feet on the air, looking at the ceiling, goofing off. And that's the danger, because we work in a world where if you're not doing something, you're wasting your time. Thinking is the lost science, or lost art, lost whatever you want. Thinking is the way we need to re-implement. Thinking is what you're going to do when you work on a complex problem. And by the way, you get the same answer every time, wherever I ask the question. So idea generation, then selection and implementation planning, and then measure and improve. So you don't stop when you have your idea. You stay with the idea a little bit to make sure that it gets implemented properly. And very often you're going to change it. Once it gets in operation, you're going to change it. That's what startup companies do very well. So startup companies, let's talk for that 2 minutes. Startup companies are born with the innovating virus. They took a bath one day and they became innovator. Their biggest problem is how to get organized to make money. Their biggest problem is not to innovate. The startup, I'm not going to teach them innovating because they intuitively know how to do it. But where they're going to fail is in getting organized to monetize what their idea is. And that, in a startup, that's where we apply innovation, in monetizing. Okay? So, here's a 5-step innovative thinking. Here's the framework, just to give you a sense of what we do. We teach people how to write a question, because you haven't never learned how to write a question. So we teach people how to write a question. Then, in the problem statement, there is a question, but there is also boundaries. Let's assume my problem is how to lose weight. I'll give you 2 sets of boundaries. Set 1, I don't want to diet and I don't want to exercise. Set 2, I'm ready to exercise and I'm ready to diet. Is it the same problem? So you can actually change the problem. Increase sales by 20%. The boundary would be you have 2 months to do it or you have 2 years to do it. You have resources, you have no resources. So the boundaries are an intricate part of the problem. The problem is the question and the boundaries. Most bosses, when they give a problem to people, they don't give boundaries. Fair? Because we never learn how to do it. It's not because you're a bad person. It's because you never learned how to do it. So, boundaries, consensus on type of thinking. Do you want long-term ideas or short-term ideas? Do you want incremental or do you want revolutionary? Do you want one idea or many ideas? If you don't tell me that, I have no idea what you want.
Setting boundaries in the beginning of the innovation can kill the innovation.
No, it doesn't. With all due respect.
Yeah,
No, but let me tell you why you think that. If I give you boundaries, that's reality. If I don't give you, let's assume I don't give you how much budget I have and I tell you design something. you're going to come to me with something very expensive, and I'm going to say, I'm terribly sorry, we only have $50,000. So what do you prefer? Me to tell you you have the $50,000 upfront, or once you have spent a week or 2 weeks developing an idea? So I'll tell you what the solution is when you use boundaries. Okay? What the boundaries are reality. Now be careful of fake boundaries, okay? But the boundaries are reality. That's why don't come back after I have done all the thinking, because the problem is even worse. I now love this idea. This idea is brilliant for me. I'm in love with it, and I think you're a complete, with all due respect again, you're a complete idiot because you don't love my idea. But it's not that you don't love my idea, it's you only have $50,000. So tell me up front the $50,000, and then where that theory, the second piece of that theory to make it work, is that when you are in brainstorming or in divergence, there is no limit. That's the part where you have no limit, when you are in divergence. But when you are in convergence and you're going to select the best idea, gravity is a pretty good boundary. Do you understand? So if, for example, when people don't apply the divergent convergent, they don't understand because they say boundary is bad. Boundary is good. But it's good as long as during the divergent phase you're going to blow yourself out. But it requires a combination of both for it to work. You've got to be careful. That's a common misunderstanding, that you shouldn't tell people their boundary. That will waste more time than any other thing. I promise you.
I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but reality distortion was the secret behind Apple's innovation.
Sorry?
Reality distortion
Yes?
was the secret behind.
But it was conscious reality distortion, not unconscious.
But they weren't given boundaries.
They knew what the boundaries were. What Steve Jobs said is, I want you to do this with this little machine in that size. If that's not a boundary, what is it?
I promise that we're going to have time to ask questions.
Okay, so ownership of the problem. The last thing you need to know is who will make the decision on your problem. Because depending on who will make the decision, it's going to be completely different. So when you know who decides on the problem, you're going to make sure that that person, if you redefine the problem, you're going to make sure that the owner of the problem understands how you're redefining and agrees with it. The danger is you redefine it, you don't tell the owner, you solve your new problem, and the owner says, well, I don't like what you're doing. It's not what I asked you to do. So that's where the owner is absolutely critical. And once you have that, you can do a process planning. But you cannot do a process planning if you don't have the boundaries. Okay? So the other thing you want to eliminate from all your problem is what we call plastic words. Do you know the words like soon? Well, it's 8 o'clock. It's very soon. It's going to be 8 o'clock, so we need to eat soon. Soon, we will be able to put a man or a woman on Mars. An hour, 25 years. Same word. That's how you confuse people when you give them a problem as a leader. So what we're suggesting is when your leader gives you a problem, you have to not challenge, but make sure to understand it. And it requires a conversation first. So if you're my boss, I'm going to make sure that you understand what I'm doing when I'm questioning you about your question. And we don't call it challenge, we don't call it, etc. Be careful, okay? Don't be aggressive when you do that. But if your boss and you agree that when you give me a problem, I'm not going to go away, or I'm going to come back next morning and make sure I understand the problem. If you did that with every time somebody gives you a problem, you would reduce rework, in my opinion, by about 50%. That fair? So boundary must include, must not include. We need to challenge them. This is type of solution expected. Do you want implementable or concept? Do you want incremental or revolutionary, short or long term? And the ownership, who will make the final decision? Now, I'm going to talk briefly. So that's a 5-step. I'm going to talk very briefly because it's 8 o'clock already. So I'm going to use 4 minutes about leadership. But leadership is very easy. It has 4 elements. Well, this is a maturity model. You can take a picture of it if you want, because I'm going to take it out right away. we developed the maturity index for our clients, because the way we use it is we say, where are you today and where would you like to go? Because when we are going to work with an organization to help them become more innovative, we need to understand where they are and where they want to go. Okay? You got it? Perfect. And by the way, otherwise you come back and I'll let you. So how to make an organization, and I'm going to finish with this chart. There are 4 critical factors. The first one is leadership. And leadership drives the other 3. If your leaders are not on board with innovation, you're wasting your time. That's the first element. If your leaders are not on board for innovating, you're wasting your time. The second one is corporate culture. And people say it's the most important. I don't believe it's the most important. Corporate culture has a big influence, but it's not the end all. For me, the most important is organizational practices. Organizational practices means decision making, HR rules, IT rules, finance rules. That's how you kill innovating in an organization. By making HR rules that date from 25 years ago, that were created, that were perfect for the industrial economy, but completely stifle innovating in your organization. That means that IT will ask you, and it's a true story, it's not very long ago, IT in one company we work with, you had to have when you were doing an innovating project, there was a person responsible, they were doing innovating project, you need to have the complete specs of what you were trying to do in terms of new product before you went to talk to IT. Doesn't make sense, because IT should be involved in the process. So the way we changed that is IT became, they didn't want to change because they were a very much IT-driven company. They didn't want people to interfere with everybody. So they appointed one person to work with all the innovating team across the company to be sort of the voice of IT. It worked perfectly. Finance can stop innovation tomorrow morning. My best, with all due respect. Well, let me give you an example from a bank, and it's about 15 years ago, still exists. The bank had a rule that once a budget was assigned for a project, you were not allowed to change what it was applied to. Is that okay? So you had $1 million for a project, but it was for that project. If you changed the project, you had to renegotiate. So what was happening is innovating in that organization happened basically between the 15th of July and the 15th of September when the budget was set. Once the budget was set, everybody turned off their brain. Why? Because you couldn't innovate. Because even if you had the most brilliant idea, it was so difficult to get to change the budget that they wouldn't do it. So you had a month and a half of innovation in the organization. So the last one is individual and team skill. Individual and team skill, we have research that says, we have research that says that the only skill that works is innovative thinking and managing innovation. Change management doesn't help with how innovative your organization is. Teamwork doesn't help. I thought it would. When we researched it, it didn't work. It didn't make any difference between an innovative and a non-innovative organization. But skill is fundamental, but it's not the first thing. What bosses do is they give you a pile of money and they say, train everybody in innovative thinking. And the managers don't understand what it means for them, and the leaders don't want to make an effort. When we work with an organization, we start from the top, and until the top understand perfectly, we keep working with them. Then when they understand, we go one level down, director, etc. Then we go one level down, manager, and then when all the hierarchy is trained and understand what their role is, like it's not a 3-day training program. Like if you go at the manager level, it may be a 2-3 hour program. Then you can train the people. But don't train the people before the managers and the directors and the leaders understand what they're trying to do. Otherwise, they'll kill it. And they won't kill it on purpose, but they'll kill it because they don't know what they're looking for. So, from my point of view, what you have to start in your organization with leadership. The second thing is you have to look at your organization practice. Decision making is another one. You know, when you have so complicated decision making, it kills innovation. then skill, then corporate culture. If you focus on those 4 things, you have a very good chance of becoming more innovative. I'll stop here. You can take pictures of the rest of the slide. There is 4 or 5 more slides, but I'm not going to use them because I'm late. But now we're going to be open for questions.
The more important would be, what are the top 3 behavioral skills or competencies required to have a team for having an innovative company?
What are the competencies for teams or for individuals?
Individuals.
Individuals. The first one is to know how to define a problem and to know how to understand root cause, etc. When we train, it's 2.5 days of training. 1.5 day is to teach people how to define a problem and how to understand the root causes. If you understand that, you have a very, very good chance of being innovative. Brainstorming, you teach it, but it takes an hour. Most people don't know how to do brainstorming. Brainstorming is 5, 6 people, some experts, some non-expert, half of the time in divergent, the other half in convergent. If you do that, you have a very good chance it works, but that's not hard. Brainstorming is not hard. The hard part is to teach people how to define a problem because you never learned that in school. That's the competency. Other question? Yes, sir.
What change took place that moved us from dealing with complicated systems in business, because banks were there 150
Yeah.
years ago and other businesses have been going on, to the complex, and that necessitated innovation? What changes in the society?
The main changes would be globalization, which creates competition that suddenly accelerates. So if somebody develops a solution in Kuwait today, a bank in Canada can apply it, can just borrow it or buy it, etc., within 3 months. Before, it would take 3 years. So globalization, communication, and customer demands. Customers are much, much more demanding. So all those things created a world where yesterday's answer is not good enough. Because the industrial system works beautifully if the world goes slowly. I mean, I'm going to age myself. I graduated from business school in 1970. In 1970, we were doing strategy planning over 10 years with the price of oil and inflation and everything constant. Now today, you would never think about doing that. I mean, companies are lucky if they do 2 years planning. But so the world has accelerated, everything has compressed, and suddenly the good answer from yesterday may or may not be good tomorrow. That's what I believe changed. Yes?
Thank you very much for this interesting lecture.
Yeah.
People get confused about 3 words, fuzzy words: innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship, okay.
So if you just shed some light about what
Okay.
is the borderline between these
Okay,
3.
so creativity is having ideas. Children are creative, artists are creative. It's only about having ideas. Innovation is solving a problem. Okay? Entrepreneurship is creating a structure, an organization that will do something new and different or better. But they use innovation usually, but it's not an innovative organization. They use innovation as a way to operate, and because they don't have any history, they don't have all the shackles and the boxes that limit everybody. The best example I know of entrepreneurship is in Canada. Direct banking was created in the 80s. 2 companies started at the same time. ING Direct was created by ING, which is the insurance company from Holland, was created from scratch. There's no employee, no nothing. Bank of Montreal created one direct banking division. They put millions of dollars behind it. The mistake they made is they kept HR and finance within the bank. So that means that all the rules were 40,000 employee bank. The other one, at the beginning, they had 20 employees. They were able to make their own rules, etc. The other one was completely shackled by what it is. So the power of an entrepreneurial organization is their flexibility. When you look at entrepreneurial organization, they may not know how to do innovative thinking, but they live it. And they're flexible and they're changing and they're moving. when you look at an entrepreneurial company, it's very rare that their product that succeeds is the same that the product they started with. Okay, so they have modified it, changed it, etc. The problem that entrepreneurial companies have is to grow. And that's where they need to apply the innovation process. The innovating process is how to grow without killing the energy. Now, when you are a large organization established, do not, I ask you, please, do not try to become an entrepreneurial company. You can't. You cannot. Because you're not free. You're not on top of the garage. You've got a building, you've got receptionists, you've got employees. You have to pay those people. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you lose everything, well, it's too bad. You won't eat tomorrow. But if you have 20,000 or 10,000 employees, you cannot be an entrepreneur because there are too many rules and boundaries that force you to operate like a big company. So recognize you are a big company. The other thing that I would add to your 3 questions is, do you want in your organization an innovative culture? I do not want an innovative culture. I want a culture that supports innovating. You see the difference? If you are a startup, innovative culture, no problem. If you are a bank and you've been in business for 30 years, trying to become like Google or Apple or whatever will kill your organization because that's not who you are. But you want an organization that allows you to innovate as much as possible as a bank. But never try to be a Google. That's a mistake. You know, when people say, well, I would like to have the culture of Google and you're a banker. And I say, well, it's very simple. Do you make 80% margin on your product? Well, no. Well, Google does. Do you have 2,000 candidates for every job? No. Well, Google does. So when you make 80% margin and you have 2,000 candidates for every job, then you can become innovative. And if you're a bank, you will never do it. So be careful of that, the innovative culture. People use those examples. Even Apple. Apple is a different beast. It's an organization that was created by maniacs, like crazy, crazy people. Okay?
How do you draw a line between a real boundary, such as a time constraint or a budget constraint, and a boundary that's shaped by your own perceptions and how you are
So the second one we call paradigms. Paradigm is an old boundary that you still think applies. If you just make a list of boundaries, you will have boundaries and paradigms. So the way we do it is we make the list and then we challenge each boundary. And we get people, so the way we challenge it is we get somebody to defend it and somebody to attack it. And the rest of the team judge whether you should keep it or not. But in the end, it's the boss who decides if it keeps or not. But it's very careful, you have to be very, very careful because an old boundary, an old paradigm looks very much like a boundary. So, sorry, yes, 1, 2, 3.
There's one over here.
No, one over here. Ladies first. I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. When profit is not your driving force in an organization, you are within a service or non-for-profit, what would be different in the model that you presented just now? What would be a key difference?
Understand what value you deliver. Because remember what I said at the beginning, innovation is only a tool or an enabler. So that's what you're going to use. So you can use it for any sort of company, but make sure you understand what your goal is. Because your goal is not to become innovative. Your goal is to serve more people, is to serve people better, whatever. Make sure what that goal is, and then start doing it. But apply it against the goal. So that's why when we say creating value with implemented idea, value can be money, can be for the community, can be for the employees, can be value for anybody.
And will the role of leadership be more important in this setting?
It's the same. It may be more visible because it's smaller, but it's the same. Sir.
Yes, thank you for the nice presentation. My question regarding success stories, for example, good examples that you work on by yourself, in an institution or university or in Canada or in France.
So an example of?
Success story of using innovation ideas.
Well, one of the best story I have of a consulting project. Like, if you look at implementing innovating in an organization, what we're doing with Hyundai today is very, very innovative, where we spend 2 days with the executive, then we train the level 1 down, the level 2 down. We've trained all the people. Now we've created a project to train, to give people the skill. The project we are working on is how to create capacity. So it's all integrated to make sure that people learn the skill, but all the leaders know what they're trying to do. Okay? So that's from an organization point of view. From a consulting, my favorite project is a project we did for Staples. And the objective was how to sell more technology to small business. Staples has about 80% market share in paper and pen. It's not a very good business to be in, okay, because it's going like this. Sorry? Sorry.
Science institution.
Science institution?
University or institution that works in science.
With organizations that work in science? Well, what we did is DRDC, Defense R&D, in Canada, in science. And what we did is we did strategy with them to help them make sure they were focused. And then we trained the scientists. I am not saying we were very successful, because they are very, 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 very opinionated. You know them. They know the truth. When somebody knows the truth, it's very hard to tell them that there may be possibly another truth beside it. So that was the problem we had with scientists. Okay? Sorry? Yes, 1, there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. And then we should be okay. Go.
For defining the problem, it's mostly from out the company, is to have better idea to identify it, or from inside the company?
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean?
Yeah, to define the problem in the complexity company.
Yeah.
It's better to put outside people to identify it, or in the company to identify it?
Involving outside people is critical in a lot of cases. But what you want to do is you want to have experts and non-experts working together. So sometimes the non-experts can come from your company, but they're not experts on what you're working on. But if you're using, for example, improve customer satisfaction, and you don't involve customer, you're probably wasting your time. So yes, but the principle is you want diversity on a team. If you have a team that has only experts, they cannot innovate. Because, well, it's so hard. It's almost impossible. Because they all know what the answer is. So it's so hard to get out of there. So in bring in people, like we used to do, we used to work for a cosmetic company in Germany. The best person we wanted to bring all the time was a receptionist. But she didn't care. And she asked the stupid question. The stupid questions are what triggered the best innovation. So you don't want only experts, because the experts do not ask the stupid question. It's true also for science. And one of the problems with science is they don't know how to work in teams. Because they are rewarded by working individually. No, but you may work, but you normally are rewarded for being working individually. So it becomes very hard, because if you invite more people, then they co-own the project. Sorry, yes?
My question is more, if you were designing a healthcare system.
Designing what?
Healthcare system. So
healthcare system?
Eric Hoskins comes to you and asks you for your advice.
I say no, thank you. But keep going.
How would you design a healthcare system which is usually not innovative? There's many bureaucracies, many pitfalls, many agencies, many lens, etc. How would you go on about creating a culture that supports innovation in healthcare or an academic center?
This is a suicide question. He's not getting the book. This is a mean question. The problem with healthcare is that it's a combination of new science and new stuff, etc., and very, very old habits. Okay? And the old habits are interfering with the new stuff. So what I would do is I would start from the user. Who is the user? The patient. I would start from the patient and redesign it, involving all the groups. But you would have to do, you would need at least one psychiatrist per team member just to do it all the time, because those people are so attached to the way they do things, and they believe that if you give more to one, that means that you are losing. You know, it's not if I give you 10, I lose 10. It's if I give you 10, I make 10. So I would, or the second thing is I would look at a model like the Mayo Clinic, salary for doctors. End of conversation. Not negotiable. Mayo Clinic is probably the most innovative medical organization in the world. And there's a reason for that, is you take away the financial incentive. You take away the unions. The problem with union with innovation, I have nothing against unions, okay? I think unions do a very, very commendable job. When you look at innovation, a union is there to preserve the status quo. That's their job, and they would tell you that. That's their job, to preserve the status quo for the benefit of their members. There's nothing wrong with that, but that really gets in the way of innovation. So I promise you I wouldn't do it. Thank you for the question.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Out of your last presentation slides, I found, there are a few factors which are, driving factors in an innovating organization. My question is, why wouldn't you consider teamwork as a driving factor for innovating organizations?
And you consider what?
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
And taking individuals, doesn't it, take competition in consideration over there?
So teamwork is necessary for innovation to succeed. Okay?
Yes.
So it is. I agree with you. The problem is that if I train your team, we've done research in Canada and in the US with the HR community, looking at the impact of training in teamwork, change management, and innovation on how innovative the organization was. So, the correlation goes both ways. But we've logged that. Teamwork and change management make no difference on how innovative an organization is. Well, we measure innovation by their self-evaluation. You work for an innovative company, and then we took the high one on both sides. Teamwork, change management make no difference. Innovative thinking and managing innovation make a huge difference. So, teamwork is necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's not because you have good teamwork that will work. And people train teamwork in terrible, terrible ways. Like, you take a group of random people and you train them at teamwork, and then they go back to their own organization or their own team, and nobody else applies the same principle. It never works. So teamwork, for example, is one where you have to train intact teams. It's the same thing with innovation. You have to train intact teams. If I train a team in innovation, it takes about 4 to 6 months for it to stick, okay, in terms of behaviors. If my teammates and my boss have been trained with me, now there is reinforcement between the two. If I train people at random, after 3 months, there is nothing left. And we did the experiment with a Canadian bank. There is nothing left. There was one last person on that side. No? No, sorry. Yes, sir. And then you, last, I presume. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Andres Perez. My question is about I would like a definition of the leadership more clear, because in the pyramid you put here, you have the leadership and the skill of the people, okay? But sometimes your people have more skill than you for some specific task, and I think the leadership is not to be the leadership in this moment and give this leadership to your people. And a definition of leadership, I think, is necessary.
For me, the leadership is someone who gets the organization to help the people innovate. You don't need to be an expert in order to be an innovative leader. What you need is you need to understand what stops innovation in your organization and what helps it.
Psychology, manage people, to manage people.
It's emotional intelligence. It's psychology, it's whatever you want to call it. But it's about, you see, in industrial, let's look at the difference with industrial organization. In industrial organization, you became the boss when you knew more than everybody else. So knowledge was the base of promotion in the industrial economy. In the knowledge economy, The ability to manage a group of people is much more important than knowledge. Okay? So in innovation, the job of the boss is to make sure that people get trained, to make sure that the obstacles get eliminated, to make sure that people have the resources, etc. It's not to tell them what to do. So even if they're very innovative, actually it's counterproductive. Okay. Last, well, we got 1, 2, any candidate? 3, 4, that's it. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
Thank you for the very informative presentation. My question is, going back to the last slide, now we don't have an innovating team in our company. We work in the region here. Yeah. You mentioned that we have to define the problem. Where should we start? Should we go tomorrow to our company, say, let's go, let's have an innovative team? What should we do tomorrow?
Well, you are a manager, or?
Yes, I am a manager.
You're a manager, so you have a boss.
Yes. My boss is the owner of the company. I'm the VP of the retail.
Very good. So, does your boss want innovation?
Yes.
Good. Does he have any idea how to do it?
Probably.
Okay, probably not.
Probably.
I'm being generous here. And he's probably a very nice man and very, very good, very smart. Probably doesn't know. So first thing, if I were you, the first thing if I were you is I'd learn everything I need to learn about innovation.
Which I'm doing.
Very good. Well, more than this, okay? I would learn as much as possible what it is, how it works, etc. Then I would look at the objective of my company and say, what type of innovation would be more profitable for us? And then I wouldn't create a director of innovation or anything. In our opinion, creating a director of innovation is when you're really starting to do well, then you put someone in charge of making it happen. But it's not having somebody. You don't start with that. You start by experimenting. You start by doing some project. When you have some successes, then people start noticing it, and now you start expanding it. That would be my recommendation.
Do we have to have a team? Maybe we have innovative.
Well, you have innovative people.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
No, you don't need an innovation team. I would not. That's the mistake people say. They say, oh, we'll appoint a director of innovation. That's the kiss of death in most companies. Because everybody say, hey, we have a director of innovation. He's responsible for innovation. I don't have to do it. That's what happened. So you are, as a leader of the organization, you take the responsibility to try to understand. We have a model. Come to see me at the end. I'll give you a card. We have a model which is called innovation planning. And it says, what's your business objective? What's the environment? What's positive and negative about innovation in our environment? What's our business objective? What's our environment? What's the priority or the objective for innovation? What strategies should I use? What are the tactics? It's like a marketing plan, like a financial plan. The problem is, when people see the word innovating, they don't make a plan. They make a prayer. No, but serious. They don't make a plan. So my suggestion is if you want to do, I'll email you the plan. But it's not rocket science. It's exactly that. What's your business goal on which you want to apply innovation? What's the context? What's your priority for innovation? What are your strategies? And then the tactics. Okay. Where else? There was one on this side. Oh, well, we'll go over there because the other one. You'll have to raise your hand again. I've forgotten. Still late at the end of the day.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. I'm working as a training and development supervisor in the same organization with Mr. Ali, the one who has just asked the question.
Yeah, you. Yeah. Okay.
And my question was, as you said, now all the schooling system that we have is built for industrial revolution. Even the school itself, it works like factory. We have batches that if you are 10 years, you have to go to grade 4. Like this, if you are 11 years, you have to grade 5.
You're preaching to the convinced.
No, because I'm working in education.
No,
so,
I know it.
Exactly.
We developed a program for kids, a program for kids.
Exactly. We are killing creativity. In schooling, we are killing creativity.
Yep.
Big part. So the question is now, when we talk about development in organizations, we have a big challenge because now if I suggest working top down strategy, work from management to workforce. Then the point is the leaders will say, we know more, so you have to train the workforce, the people.
Okay.
Then the people need someone to follow up. Who will follow up what I trained?
Okay, let me tell you how we work. And we have an advantage is we are outsiders, so we can tell the CEO, I'm sorry, we won't work with you. If the executives is not ready to be trained first, and I'm not saying the basic training for people is 2 days. Executives can be half a day. If the executive is not ready to spend half a day to get trained on what is their role in innovating, I don't want to work with them. Is that fair? I don't want to. Because I know it will fail. I know it will not work. Because that means that they're paying lip service to innovation. They're not serious about it. If you're not ready to spend half a day on innovating and learning what your role is and what it is and how it happens, I don't want to work with you. So unfortunately, if that's the situation, what you do is you take one of the leader, who has a group, let's say the VP of marketing or the VP of sales or whatever, and you work with them and develop innovating in their territory. But if the leader of that territory doesn't buy into it, it won't happen. So what you do is you break it down and you create value within that silo. But the real value of innovating is between silos. That's where you start creating real value. So you miss that. Explain that to the executives. Otherwise, don't try.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. There was one person on this side. No? Yes? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe by now we have witnessed that innovation is very important to our organization and to take our organization to the next level. Now the question is, if we want to make innovation as part of our culture, in our DNA, not as an ad hoc, what would be the approach to reach that level?
Exactly the same approach, carefully, one step at a time. Start with the leadership, go down in the organization, and make sure that the leaders reinforce the right behavior all the time. It will take approximately 6 months by level. So if you have 4 levels in your organization, it'll take you 2 years before you can start saying you're successful. But it's constant work. If the CEO is not ready to spend 10% of their time on reinforcing the right behavior, they're wasting their time. So they want it, but they're not ready to make the effort. That's a problem. Okay? So it's the same methodology, but it takes a little more time if you want to make it a DNA. And by the way, the objective of how much innovative you can be depends on the business you're in. If you're a cell-phone company, you can reach a certain goal. If you're a bank, certain goal. If you're an insurance company, it's much lower. Just because you're not going to change the nature of the beast. Okay?
Can I just have a very quick comment, please? Just a very quick comment.
I'm here. I'm staying, okay? So
everybody is trying, well, everybody so far is avoiding the big elephant in the room.
Which is?
You are talking about leaders and starting from leaders. Now, if leaders are there, not based on their knowledge, nor their skills, they are there because somebody decided that they will just come down in that position, in that chair, in a parachute. Mm-hmm. So they don't have the knowledge, nor the skills to lead. So we have to address the different culture that created leaders in our organizations. You are assuming that by targeting leaders, we are going to answer the questions. Okay. But leaders are not there because they led a career through knowledge or through skills. They are there because somebody wanted them to be there. End of story.
Okay. I'll take that. No, very good. No, I'll take that, and that's a passionate comment, and you get the book. Because that was very, very passionate. I'll give it to you, actually, right now, to prove that it is, and it's even signed. But, okay, you're right, and if the boss doesn't have what it takes to lead an innovating organization, bear with me, then you start one level down. I work with the bank, second largest big bank in Canada in 1985, 83, 85. The CEO was an absolute idiot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, So it's not only in Kuwait, don't worry. Like, he was a dictator, but he was an idiot. Like he was, excuse me, like moron is a good name for a guy like that. So what the people working for him did, I was invited to facilitate a meeting. They really didn't tell me what it was until about a day before. It was to do the strategy and do everything despite the CEO. And because they control the whole organization, they control the bank, they control every element of the bank, they were able to implement it, but it wasn't official until the CEO resigned, left. So that's real life, okay? You have other problem, is you have a more patriarchal culture where people are afraid to challenge. Well, if I want to teach you how to question a question, you have to be able to do it. So if you're too afraid to question your boss, it won't happen, it won't work. So you have to do it in a way that will work within your culture. But it also depends on the individual. The people I've met yesterday and today when I was training this morning, they're all open-minded, they're all great people. I don't know how they behave in their own organization, but I can tell you I was terribly, terribly impressed by how open-minded they were. So if their own people were asking them to challenge their question, I'm sure they would tolerate that, but you have to do it carefully. Like, for example, you never do it without talking to the people. You say, I had a conference by this crazy Canadian, and he told me I need to understand what your questions are. Well, okay, but tell them that before you do that to them. It's like if you teach it to a kid. You teach it to a 7-year-old. I tell you a story about my daughter. My daughter is 26. She blames me, still today, for the only time in her life where she was sent to the principal's office. And it was my fault, because I taught her how to question a question too early. You can't do it until a kid is about 11, 12. She was about 7, 8. And so I teach her that. Then she goes into the school. Next day, teacher asks a question. Say, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? She does it once. The teacher say, okay, good. She does it twice. Okay, good. Third time, principal's office. Only time in her life, she still blames me. She's right. So you just have to do it carefully. If you're in a school context, it depends on the culture of your organization. We never, ever apply the same process, the same methodology, and the same anything for two different companies. Like, we've worked with the 5 top banks in Canada. We have not implemented the similar strategy with any of the 5 banks. The principles are the same, but you can't, so you have to take care of your culture, the personality, the country you work with. I did a lot of work in France. For example, in France, if you have a meeting in Canada that takes 2 hours, in France it takes 4 hours. Just be aware of it. Yeah, and I don't know how it would take in Kuwait. I'd have to learn about that. But learn, so adapt your organization and your method, because you know that in France everybody wants to chat. Okay. You're welcome. Yes.
Okay, actually 2 points that I have for you, sir. One is, doesn't it involve the level of maturity of the organization that determines what kind of concepts or approach to the innovation model to apply?
Okay, and let's skip to the one at a time. Yes, but that depends on what you mean by maturity. If you're a 40-year-old bank, or you have a 5-year-old very successful bank, it's completely different. They're both mature in their own way. So it depends. Define maturity, then you can start thinking differently.
The second one is, in the past, we used to say, okay, let's make the process more efficient and more productive. So
Correct.
increase
Six
efficiency
Sigma.
and productivity. Wasn't this also reached by applying innovation?
In a perverse sense, yes. But the problem is, okay, I'm going to launch. Is there anybody from McKinsey or BCG or anybody like that here? I don't want to offend anybody who's in the room. Okay. Those people are very nice. I mean, I have very, very good friends who are consultants like that. The problem is they are one-trick monkeys. Thank you. You see, I tried. They're one-trick monkeys. They know analytical thinking. Their job is to eliminate ambiguity, whether it is possible or not. But that's what they are great at. I have made more money in my career from McKinsey, BCG, Monitor, and all those guys, because the company gets their report, and it's brilliant, but they have no idea how to implement it because they don't take into consideration the human factor. So now we come in and we do the complex piece, and so thank you very much. But from my point of view, why did they get there? Because they were the leaders in school, they were the best in school, they were the best in university, they were picked by McKinsey, and their job is to eliminate ambiguity. They're told like that. So they do it very well. So in the industrial economy where they made their name and their reputation, they were brilliant. In the knowledge economy, they're incompetent. But thank you very much for the business they gave me. All right.
Okay.
It's 8:30, 5:40. Yep. I'll let you conclude.
Thank you all for joining us in this evening, and please join me to thank Mr. Legrand again. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. And if you have any last question or confidential question, you can come and see me.